This is a tale of the future. For centuries, the Sol hegemon has ruled uncontested the greatest swath of human space in the galaxy. Earth is long abandoned, its great cities reduced to overgrown ruins as mankind has sought new homes and new dominions amongst the stars. But now the beating heart of the Sol hegemon has been convulsed by revolution. The rebels claim they fight for freedom and equality, but are they truly any better than those whom they name oppressor? But on the fringe of human space, worlds remain untouched by war and revolt. It is to this region that the crew of the Babylon Rocker have come, seeking peace and escape, both from the chaos of revolution and the dark specters of the past. On the fringe, there is hope. On the fringe is freedom and light and opportunity. But with such freedoms and opportunities come many dangers, some of the future, others of the past that they seek to avoid. Such is the nature of the wild edge of human space. There lies adventure. There goes Babylon Rocker. Last time, we saw the early reign of the Gozoku, the slow corruption of the Snake Clan, and its final eradication by the Phoenix Clan in the Five Nights of Shame. The first time, though certainly not the last, that a minor clan would be eliminated completely. We are now firmly in the 5th century of Rokugani history, and by then, the three leaders of the Gozoku, Shiba Gaiju Shiko, Joji Raigu, and Bayushi Atsuki, were taking steps to maintain their grip on power. The puppet emperor Hante Kusada was already sewn up. Now they turned to his offspring. In total, Kusada had 7 children, 4 sons and 3 daughters, although one of the former and 2 of the latter remain nameless and unknown. Starting in 406, the Gozoku proceeded to send Kusada's children away from the imperial capital to foster with other clans. In 406, the emperor's eldest son and heir presumptive, Sojiro, was sent to foster with the Phoenix clan. In 418, a second son, Harada, was sent to the Crane clan, and in 421, a third son, Kentaro, was sent to foster with the Scorpion clan. Obviously, the point was to ensure that each of the emperor's children would grow up either sympathetic to the Gozoku or another useless puppet like their father, thus ensuring that the Gozoku would not only maintain power for this generation, but the next generation as well. The thing about the Gozoku was that although they had effectively illegally usurped the emperor's rightful authority, in terms of running the empire, there were plenty of upsides to their rule. Trade boomed, so there was a lot of prosperity for everyone, highborn and lowborn. And since the Crane were involved, and since they'd always been great patrons of the arts, a lot of cultural flourishing occurred during the Gozoku's reign. But there's always a dark side to these kinds of things, and the big one for the Gozoku was that corruption was rampant. Nowhere was this more obvious than in Rioko Owari Toshi, or Journey's End City. Situated in land belonging to the Scorpion clan and the second largest city in the empire, after the capital itself, Rioko Owari is and has always been a city of many names, from the City of Stories or the City of Green Walls, to far less flattering titles like the City of Lies or the City That Dung Built. In essence, Rioko Owari was the Sin City of the Emerald Empire. The place where all of the social refuse inevitably congregated, a hotbed of crime and vice. Enforcing the Emperor's laws and the Emperor's justice in such a city had always been a monumental endeavor. Thanks to the Gozoku, it soon became all but impossible. Thanks to their three-way monopoly of political power, the Crane, Scorpion, and Phoenix clans successfully spread its tendrils of influence and patronage throughout the empire, entrenching agents in every major city. Even if you were unaware of the exact nature of the Gozoku conspiracy, you didn't have to be a very smart man to realize that these 3 clans now effectively monopolized political power. The only way to get ahead, therefore, was to suck up to them. You do them favors, they do you favors in return. And soon enough, nearly every official of importance in Rioko Owari was on the Gozoku payroll. One of the few exceptions to this rule was the local Emerald Magistrate, Seppun Gohoru. Having served in his capacity since coming of age, Gohoru was one of the few people in the Empire not already part of the Gozoku to be aware of its existence and its reach. As the Gozoku spread its tentacles into Rioko Owari, it soon made alliances with the local criminal networks, garnering their help in exchange for ensuring that they avoided the grasp of imperial law. Time and again, the Emerald Magistrates sought to hunt down and eliminate criminal elements that were aligned with the Gozoku, only to find many of his assistants, or Yoriki, dead in their homes days later. As Emerald Magistrate, the Gozoku couldn't strike out at someone as prominent as himself directly, but they could strike out at those who worked with him. And so Gohoru gained nothing for his endeavors but a lot of dead subordinates. However, even though they had usurped the Emperor's authority, the Gozoku's grip on power was no more ironclad than that of the Hantei line. Rokugan is a society comprised of samurai clans. Clans that, however obedient they were to the imperial capital, were a law unto themselves in their own lands. Even with the imperial legions at his beck and call, even the most autocratic emperor could only do so much to stop a great clan if it wanted something. And in the case of the new Lion Clan champion Matsu Itagi, what he wanted was war with the Phoenix Clan. Matsu Itagi was often described as a bull of a man, 6 feet tall and built like an ox. He was also one of the few figures in power to be aware of the Gozoku's existence, and was a fierce opponent of theirs. As a lion, he was almost fanatically loyal to the Hantei lineage, and so resented the Gozoku's usurpation, but he also had personal reasons to be their enemy, namely the fact that his elder sister was Mochiko, the former Matsu daimyo who had been busted down to the rank of a lowly ronin. The Gozoku had also tried, and ultimately failed, to stop Itagi from becoming the new Lion Clan champion after the death of Okoto Mitsuyuki. So he had a lot of reasons to oppose them. But even if he'd wanted to help the Emperor restore his power, there was only so much his one clan could do by themselves, since 3 clans were part of the Gozoku, while the Dragon and Crab clans had opted for neutrality. Besides, Itagi was a warrior, not a courtier, and his greatest ambition was to prove the superiority of his own clan. And so, from the moment he became clan champion in 401, Itagi led the line into a series of battles and border disputes with all of his neighbors. The Lion Clan would venerate Itagi for generations as their clan's greatest leader since Okoto himself, and by the end of his life, he would claim no less than 100 victories in the field. Itagi also garnered a reputation as a master duelist, entering into no less than 24 Iaijutsu challenges and winning each one, with his enemy never landing so much as a scratch on him. But like all Matsu, Itagi was a very proud man, and while he was not alive at the time, the memory of his clan's defeat in the Lion-Phoenix War had always rankled him. Defeating Phoenix armies on the border was one thing, but none of these, in his opinion, were enough to avenge the Lion Clan's defeat in 353. And so, in the year 408, Matsu Itagi organized and launched a mass invasion of Phoenix lands. Given that he'd been launching attacks across the border into Phoenix lands along with those of his other neighbors, technically the Second Lion-Phoenix War had begun the moment he became clan champion. But this was the first time since the First Lion-Phoenix War that the Lion Clan had pushed this far into enemy territory. For reasons that aren't really explained, instead of just attacking the Phoenix from their own land directly, the Lion army swung far to the east and tried to come at them through the Mountains of Regret, which kind of exist on the border between the Phoenix Clan and the Centipede Clan. Specifically, they tried to invade through Kiken no Roka, the Treacherous Pass. Unfortunately for the Lion, the pass was held by a garrison of Phoenix soldiers led by one Shiba Kaigen. Same name as the founder of the Eternal Phoenix Dojo, but not the same guy. This Shiba Kaigen was a rare example of someone who was both a swordsman and a spellcaster. Like most of the Shiba family, he studied the art of the sword, but in his youth he had also studied the ways of the Shugenja, and had come up with strange and unorthodox ways of combining his 2 skill sets into unusual fighting techniques and tactics. And it was just as well for the Phoenix Clan, for when he saw the Lion army approaching his garrison, Kaigen knew that it would take all of his skill to hold the Lion off until reinforcements could arrive. And that was precisely what he and his garrison did. They died to the last man and made the lion pay dearly for every life they took. And by the time the lion broke through the treacherous pass at last, a reinforcing army led by the Isawa arrived and routed them, handing Matsu Itagi his first significant defeat. By then, Gozoku leader Shiba Gaiju Shiko had been made aware of what was going on, and he brought the political pressure of his faction against the lion, forcing Itagi to put an end to the war. For a time, things were relatively quiet in the empire. In 410, the newly founded Sparrow clan were appointed the guardians of the Golden Sun Plains. This despite the fact that those plains had been protected by imperial decree for centuries. This assignment was intended as an insult to the Sparrow, but true to their philosophy of humble poverty, the Sparrow clan accepted this duty unironically and have kept it faithfully ever since. There was a small disturbance in 411 when a radical group of monks from the Brotherhood of Shinsei, who called themselves the Brotherhood of the 18 Stars, seized the city of Nikesaki, the city founded by the Phoenix Clan's Sapphire Legion a century ago. They claimed to have done this in retaliation against the Crane clan, as that great clan was trying to suppress their sect and its beliefs, though there are no details as to exactly what the Brotherhood of the 18 Stars believed. The choice of Nikesaki as their city to take over is also odd, given that it was a Phoenix city, albeit one founded to foster diplomacy between the Phoenix and Crane clans. The Crane and Phoenix armies surrounded Nikesaki, but fortunately the situation was diffused without violence thanks to the intervention of Isawa Eisai, the elemental master of the void. Again, no details are given except that he negotiated with the monks and persuaded them to surrender and disband. But a lion as irrepressible as Matsu Itagi could only be kept quiet for so long. As I said earlier, Matsu Itagi's ultimate goal, long-term anyway, was to prove that his clan was superior to all others. He had been thwarted in his attempt to take vengeance on the Phoenix clan, and now that the Gozoku's ire was firmly roused against him, he knew there would be no progress in that direction. Luckily, or unluckily, depending on how you look at it, there was another target of Matsu Itagi's resentment: the Crab Clan. Itagi wanted to prove that his clan was the best, and yet it was the Crab Clan that defended the Empire from the Shadowlands, so how could Itagi claim the superiority of the lion when others defended him? In 412, he went before Emperor Kusada and gained permission to take an army down to the Crab Shadowland border. Likely the Gozoku gave him permission because they saw this as a convenient way to be rid of him. By now, Hida Sakura was dead and had been succeeded as Crab Clan champion by the stalwart Hida Tadaka. The new Crab champion welcomed his counterpart warmly enough, but then Matsu Itagi told him what his plan was. To prove the superiority of the lion, Itagi planned to do no less than go into the Shadowlands and close the Festering Pit of Fulang himself. No mention is made of how he planned to do this, but either way, Tadaka knew that it was madness and tried to dissuade Itagi to no avail. In the end, all he could do was wish the Lion Clan champion the best and send him and his warriors on their way. 25 days passed, and there was no word of Matsu Itagi. Then another lion army arrived at the gates of Kyuden Hida, led by Itagi's younger sister, Matsu Oki. Unable to believe that her older brother was dead, Oki had come demanding his return, for she had convinced herself that the Crab Clan had tricked Itagi into going into the Shadowlands, and like most Matsu, she was not amenable to reason. Her demand was stark and simple: either restore her brother to her or face the consequences. Hida Tadaka was no coward, but he knew full well that war with the lion would only leave his own clan that much weaker, and thus less able to perform their sacred duty of defending the empire. So he offered a compromise. He himself would go into the Shadowlands and retrieve the Lion Clan champion. If Tadaka ever returned without Matsu Itagi, his own life would be forfeit. The Shadowlands have always been a perilous place for any mortal, and it is unlikely that Hida Tadaka would have found the man he sought without help. Luckily, he did have help in the form of a Nezumi scout he encountered named Tak Tak. In exchange for some colored beads, the Nezumi told the Crab Clan champion of where he might find Matsu Itagi. And find him Tadaka did. Alone, surrounded by monsters, his armor torn to pieces, and one of his arms ripped off at the elbow. And yet just as stubborn and proud as ever. Itagi refused to run away and abandon the fight, and so Tadaka fought at his side. 5 days had passed since Tadaka had gone into the Shadowlands. On the 6th day, he returned to Kyuden Hida, bleeding from many mortal wounds, carrying the dying Matsu Itagi on his shoulders. Matsuoki rushed to her brother's side just in time for him to breathe his final words, "We were not defeated." And so died Matsu Itagi. Hida Tadaka succumbed to his own wounds soon thereafter. Despite Matsu Itagi's folly in trying to seal the Festering Pit, both he and Tadaka were celebrated as heroes for their bravery, and both men were given great elaborate burials in the capital of Otosan Uchi, a singular honor. There is no mention of who succeeded Tadaka as leader of the Crab Clan. As for the lion, the most likely candidate is one Akodo Mitsuyagi. He is not included in the list of lion champions, but it would make sense given that he is the father of a future lion champion that is on the list, Akodo Kurojin. 3 years later, Winter Court was held at Kyuden Asako, and the first crack in the Gozoku's grip on power was brought about when a minor courtier, whose name and clan have been forgotten, spoke openly of the conspiracy. The crack was not what the courtier himself said, but what happened as a result of what he said, for it exposed the first signs of a rift between the leaders of the Gozoku Cabal, namely between the two clan champions Bayushi Atsuki and Doji Raigu. It seems that the Crane leader and Emerald champion's faith in the idea that the Gozoku should be the ultimate authority in the empire had begun to waver, while the Scorpion champion retained the hardline stance that the Hantei line should be no more than figureheads. No mention is made of what Shiba Gaiju Shiko's stance on the matter was, but it seems that the reaction to this nameless courtier led to an increasing mistrust between the member clans of the Gozoku conspiracy, and there are even claims of attempted sabotage and assassinations. Oh, what a tangled web that some men weave. Next time, Endgame and the downfall of the Gozoku. Until then.